Well, back at it again. Decided to make a battery. I've got two more 80 amp hour batteries to make. I'll show you that process. So these are the individual cells. I've got them in two sets of two right now. They'll be in parallel and in series to get my voltage, to what I want. This is just a camera box. This is the BMS that I'll be using. It's a LTO 5S 12 volt 150 amp continuous output. That's its limit. And it's made by these guys. Yeah, I know. My garage is way too small for the amount of stuff I have. I've pretty much used every little space that I've got. These little clips, I've got to bend them, and they'll go between the cells like that. So the BMS is going to go, it's going to go right in here. We'll mount it using these little, it's got little anchor points right there and right there. I'll mount it inside of here like that. And this configuration has plenty of room compared to the 140 amp hour batteries. There's absolutely no room in there. So I'll take these heat sinks. These are for solid state relays, is what these are made for. Heat, to dissipate the heat. I'll just cut it right there, and I can make two different heat sink stands, and they'll mount like so to the box, and then I'll mount the BMS to that. So 13.08 volts. LTO runs at a lower voltage than like lithium iron phosphate, so it'll go up to 13.6. Well, 13.8, you can hit 13.8, but usually around 13.6 is where it sits when it's balanced out. And these are all top balanced cells, just across the cell. So this is the top one to the top one. So they're all around 2.6 volts per cell pack. So I got that one in there. I put the battery voltage meter here. Got a dual USB connection right there. Then I put the latching switch. So this switch, when I turn that on, will turn power on. I'm gonna wire it a little different than my other ones. So this one will always have power, so you can check it without pushing this button. This button will turn power on to the charge port for the USB and also the cigarette lighter charge port. Like I said, this one will have the voltage meter will have power all the time, so I can check it without turning this switch on. This is a little pigtail that the latch switch comes with. I want to wire it. There's a bunch of different configurations you can do with this switch, but I want it so that there's no light until you turn it on, then it's going to be illuminated. These are our sensing wires coming off the bottom of our BMS here. This is the temperature probe for the batteries in case it's too cold. This won't let power come out of the battery. And then we just got the wires on the back side of our voltage meter. So these are the little heat sink brackets I cut, you know, out of those bigger ones. And then the BMS will just mount right there too. And got a little hole right there that it mounts to. Leaves me just enough room for the wires to clear on the back. This is our battery negative. The one right next to that will be the number 1 of our cell pack, and then it just keeps going 2, 3, 4, and 5. Just want to make sure you do them in the order that's starting with that. Took some 1/0 lugs here. You need to buy them in packs like this. But, I just drilled them out like I did on these. These are for a different. This is for a 140 amp hour battery setup. Just cut them off so they work on whatever angle you know you need them at on the BMS. Like this one. This one down in here. I've turned it down to avoid the cigarette lighter style plug here. And then this one here was fine to just come straight out, so I just cut it straight across. I had to add a little extension to this one, wasn't quite long enough. Well, that should be it for the sensing wires. I have to drill a hole in that bottom positive to have a place to put number 5, but the rest of them should be ready to go. I'll have to make the heavy duty wires that come from the positive on the battery pack up to where the 3/8 through terminal is going to be at the top here. We'll also have to have a power supply going directly to our voltage meter here, and a power going to the power on our switch, which will, off of the switch leg of this, will power the USB dual charge port and the cigarette lighter charge port. Alright, I got all the sensing wires on it. We got this is the main battery negative. So we got the sensing wire that goes to the BMS negative. And we got number 1. This will be number 2. And we got 3, 4 going up to 4, and then 5 is our main battery positive. So this will go up to that. This will go up to the lug, the pass-through terminal on the front, where you could hook up a big inverter or something like that on the heavy draw. So now what I'm going to do is wrap some barley paper around this. Well, I got it assembled for the most part. Got a little barley paper between the cells. Oops, knocked off my little jumper cable. So until I bump start the BMS, you have to energize the BMS from this side before it will recognize the cell pack. I haven't done that, so I can't really test anything else on the BMS. Right now I'm just bypassing the BMS. This is, I know it's a red wire, but I'm using that for my ground to power ground or power negative. Is the battery negative goes down through the BMS at the bottom there, and like I said, I haven't activated it yet. We've got all of our wires ran through there. The only thing I still need to do is put some expanding foam on the sides in between each one of these tabs where the different cells are at, just to make sure that they can't touch. And I'll put some, of course, here. And when I go to close it, I'll put a dollop here, 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 and here. And when the lid closes, it'll be good and solid. These are the temperature probes. This one is from the gauge here, the voltage gauge, voltage meter. It's on because of my jumper is the only reason it's working. We're sitting at 13.1 and 12 Celsius. It needs to be charged up a little bit. So that's what our voltage meter is going to look like on here. And then we've got our USB port here. And once I push the button there, it's energized. So that's it. The cigarette lighter is also energized, but it doesn't have a light in it, of course, because it's made for high temperatures. Well, that's pretty much it. We've got a blade fuse right here protecting this circuit from here to here, and the little cables. Oh, it timed out. It's got a timer on it, or I set the timer on it. Yeah, I don't like too much. Alright, well, I'm ready to close this thing up. I've got my insulator through here. What that's for, once that is attached to the terminal on the lid. So this screw right here, once I attach the lug right here, the screw will pass through this end, and this is an insulator, so the screw is not going to be energized, and that'll lock it so that when you try to wrench against it, it can't turn this inside there, because it's going to be locked between these two. Same thing on the positive. So I'm going to go ahead and hook that up, and that's pretty much it for the battery. The only other thing I'll do is put a dollop of expanding foam here, 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 and here, and that'll lock it in. So I've got foam in the front, the side, the back, and that'll be it for this 80 amp hour battery. I've got one more like this to make, and I will have used all the material that I have. So these are the two temperature probes. This is the one off the BMS, which is right here. As you can see, I put MP1 on any of the wire connections down there as well, where the BMS plugs in. On the back side here, down in there where the little pigtail comes off of the voltage meter. And then also on the back side of here, where the screws attach the battery negative and the power negative to the BMS, just to make sure that nothing can back out from expansion and contraction from the temperature change. Well, I'm going to put this thing together, and that's going to be it. Anyway, that's how I build a battery. LTO 80 amp hour battery. Learning along the way better ways of doing things, like putting that bolt through the lug where it attaches to the through terminal. Keeps it from being able to spin. That's a good way to do it. Anyway, the other ones will be stationary, so once you tighten them, you shouldn't be loosening them for anything on the 48 volt. These 12 volts I'll use for carrying with me back and forth out to the property in West Texas. Use them as I need them. Well, till the next time.